And you are on.
Okay, welcome. Brier City Council Workshop, February 15, 2022. So we have everyone with us tonight. Councilmember Nick, Gallagher, Krimke, Moran, Marley, Roseman, and Lockhart. So the first thing on our agenda is to talk about the pedestrian bridge.
What isn't?
And but maybe before Robin joins us, Paula, you want to talk about the items you have?
Sure.
Minutes.
Yeah, we can do the minutes first.
We can do approval of minutes. That's a good idea. Anything on the minutes that looked like need correction?
Good.
They look pretty tight to me.
All right, we'll move that on.
Okay, now I just gotta find.
So we have a couple things. Fuel purchase is one of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to find where I have it open. I hope I didn't close it accidentally.
So we need to buy.
Oh, John Ford is there. Hang on. He made it. Here he comes. Da, 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 da.
There he is.
Robin's in the wings as well, I see.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Forba.
Hello, John.
Hello. Sorry.
Thanks
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I didn't find it in my email earlier, so I had to go through the city's website and I was having technical difficulties.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. And tonight, one of the first things we want to talk about is the pedestrian bridge. So John, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you guys at PACE have done and what your proposal entails?
Yeah, so we've went out, did an initial assessment during some high water, actually. So we didn't get underneath to look at all of the elements, but from what we could gather, we looked at kind of what we thought needed to be replaced, what was still good, and then kind of a path forward as far as rehabilitation versus replacement. So subsequent to that, we had a discussion that we wanted to get started. So we had our environmental specialist go out and flag the ordinary high watermark of the stream, because there will be, no matter what happens, there will be some permitting going on, because there will be work, above, or adjacent to the stream within the buffer. And then we had our survey crew go out and do a topographic survey of the existing bridge, and then the about 50 feet upstream and downstream on either end of the bridge. And then they did a boundary survey as well for the adjacent parcels, because just to make sure that where that access tract is located, we wanted to make sure that we had enough room for any construction equipment to get down there, and to ensure that the existing trails were totally contained within those tracks. So kind of that's where we're at now. The proposal is to basically go out and do another analysis at a lower, where we can go into the water more, look at I guess more elements of the bridge, more structural elements, and we can see what we can really pinpoint down what needs to be replaced. We think at this point that the pier caps, the piers are good, and then the bents probably need to be replaced, while the stringers are probably good as well.
So maybe you could just describe the difference between the bents and the main members.
Sure. So the piers are essentially like a big telephone pole that are creosote treated, that are pounded down into the creek. From there, the bents, or some people call them pier caps or whatever, they're I believe they're 4x8 pieces of lumber that are, let's see, I guess they would be with the flow of the stream. Then you have your girders that are, I believe they're 6 by 16 pieces of lumber, and they run with the bridge. So as you're walking along it, and then on top of those girders, you have your actual bridge decking, which is, I believe they're dimensional lumber 2x4s, so a full 2x4. And those seemed, and you know, since I was out there last fall, we saw, you know, multiple holes in them, and it looks like what we would kind of be proposing is replacement of the bents and then the decking as well, and then in addition to that, the railings as well. So, but of course, you know, without looking at it a little further, we want to make sure that all of the pier caps and the girders are indeed, you know, that they're structurally sound and they can be reused. So I guess at this point, we're looking at kind of a little more information finding, then a rehabilitation design, and that would include structural calculations to ensure that what we're putting back in there meets current codes. I was told by my structural engineer that, you know, currently the what would it be, the handrails don't meet current code just on spacing, because there can be people that, or children, animals that can fall through the spacing. Typically you want you know, a tighter space in there. This is just well, I don't know if you've all been out there, but it's more like almost like a fencing where you have rails running longitudinally with the decking, and there's, you know, 12 to 16 inches between some of these rails. So we would, you know, make sure that everything is up to current code, and then come up with a solution as far as bidding it to a contractor, whether or not we would want to go with a, you know, a full public bid, or just open it up with a small works roster. I think that would be, we could discuss it a little more, see what the bidding climate is like, but that's kind of where we're at as far as the proposal goes that we've put together.
Thank you. Could you talk to us about what you think scheduling wise, as far as your work, if the council approves this, and then permitting, who do we have to go as far as permitting?
Oh, well, we'll have to do a SEPA, and then we will have to go to Fish and Wildlife as well, because we'll be over the, you know, ordinary high water mark. We won't be working in the stream, so we don't anticipate going to the Corps of Engineers for a JARPA. But as far as our scheduling goes, you know, we could get started on this right away. As I said, we already have the survey complete. So, you know, at your request back in December, we finished that.
Right.
So, yeah, we could get moving on it fairly quickly. I would, you know, obviously feel better about doing this during the summer, you know, low flows, and, you know, I guess that while we don't necessarily have to be working within a fish window, it would probably score us extra points with Fish and Wildlife if we said we were going to work within the fish window.
And what's that? Why don't you explain what that is?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So there's certain times of year where you are allowed to do in-stream water work. I believe it's approximately beginning of July through like September 15th. Basically, the biologists at the Corps and at at Fish and Wildlife have said that, if you do your in-stream work during these times, it's going to have the least amount of impact on water species, on aquatic species. So again, while I don't think we'd be held to that window. I would probably suggest it because it does coincide with kind of the low flows for the area.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Any questions for John?
Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, no, I think that, where we're at now in February would set us up for bidding in, say May, and then, award notice to proceed somewhere in June, a late summer construction window, which would probably
I
be.
take it you're thinking the permitting process is not going to take anywhere near as long as some of these things. If you start getting, how many of the agencies are we going to have to get involved to sign off?
Well, with this one, I believe it's just going to be WDFW.
Okay.
Fish and Wildlife, since we're going to stay out of the actual stream.
Okay.
So.
For the record, John, I was looking at here, it looks like it's 8x12 beds and 6x16 stringers.
Yeah, sorry. I knew it was 6x16. I didn't know what the bents were. There were 8.
Yeah, 8x12. So that's
12.
kind of rotted out ones we saw.
Yeah, they're big pieces of lumber. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
And so the bents and the stringers were not treated, or if they were, this thing was built back in '78.
Yeah. From my investigation, John, they're treated, but they didn't reseal the ends from their cuts.
Yeah.
And that's a real, you really, when anyone deals with pressure treated things, when you make a cut, you really got to seal the ends. And that's what seemed to happen to those 8x12 bents, that they made a cut and they didn't seal the end. And that's where that rot came from.
Yep.
So, see a couple things. What are you thinking? I think I saw it in the write-up. Just said, replace it's TNG. It said on the decking, but what are you thinking would be on for the decking?
I would love to put on some sort of non-slip coating, because I know that it does get wet out there.
But what about? Are you thinking just straight wood, or like in Yellowstone and others, they switched over to using the different Trex type products and stuff?
I guess that would be a funding issue. I think we would be. We would do whatever you guys would like. I think that it would have to be pressure treated at a minimum. If you guys wanted to spend the extra per linear foot of board, I think Trex is a good way to go.
Right. Yeah. There's. As you've looked at this, obviously this is to get to a final, bid sheet and all that. But what's your feeling on, scope and cost? We had some pretty big numbers early on. Certainly citizens have heard some of those numbers, up to, $600K, but this is good. We don't have to be in the river or in the stream, things like that. But any just a rough number, obviously once you get the rest of this together, we'll get kind of a more dialed in thing.
I haven't even looked at what a full replacement cost is. I could look, I could give you a cost based on some board footage, but I haven't gone that far. As it's not going to be a full replacement,
right?
It's not going to be the 600K that we were originally talking about. Then that was based off of the Scriber Creek Bridge, that was downstream, that we did 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Okay.
But I would have to get, there's I would like to contact some contractors if we really need to dive into it, because it is kind of an odd situation as far as access goes. And it's going to take, some temporary shoring or something like that to get those bents out of there, or maybe they take out the stringers and then take out the bents. I mean, I don't want to tell them means and methods.
Right. Understood.
So it's just such a specialized, project that, we haven't had one of I don't know anyone that's really had one of these.
Right. So this is kind of like, this gets us to a point where we get it dialed in, we'll get bids, and then we've got to decide, and you'll be able to do a bit more estimating, and we'll see what the contractors bring in. But we still could have a number that's big enough that we might be going, ooh, how are we going to make this happen?
Yeah.
Okay. I still think, and again, this is just something I've tossed out, but especially maybe with, maybe there'll be some things that we might be able to do with Verdant or something. I know these paths and how much they're being used. So that's a kind of down the road here a little bit, but worth to be thinking about from council perspective and mayor if we try to maybe need to think about some funding, but let's, sounds like we invest this in to get kind of to a bid package.
I agree, Martin. Looking at options with Verdant or going to our electeds in Olympia, there might be some availabilities, or Snohomish County too, because this is a well-used bridge for pedestrians, and obviously it's an important part of the walking availability for our citizens. So we will look at all those things.
Yeah, I mean,
John,
sorry. I mean, at a minimum, we could get, a bid-ready package put together. And then, if there was no funding available, or if you guys wanted to bid it, came back, we're unhappy with the bids, we would still have the package where we could go after some funding, in the next funding cycle as well. So.
And I think what I'm hearing, like when we were, where we did all the sidewalk work, you guys could kind of give us a sense of that, because it was pretty much, you remove stuff, you might have this, you could guess what type of fill you did or didn't have underneath. But this, like you said, all the staging, all these other complications just make it harder for you to estimate right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also a thing of, you're not going to be using traditional construction equipment for a lot of this. You can't walk in an excavator down a 10-foot wide tract through there. And like you said, staging, and it'll be interesting to see how people, approach it. But suddenly somebody wants to bring in the crane or something for some of those bents are pretty big, but yeah. Yeah, so on the northeast side, that's not as constrained by, fences and the neighbor's property. I mean, it's the neighbor's property. I should note that the pathway on the northeast side is not fully constrained within the tract, so it does go onto private property. I mean, I don't even know if the private property owners are aware of that. They probably aren't, but we might be able to walk in some bigger equipment on that side, but it'll be interesting, I guess.
It's certainly not the same situation as the other bridge that we replaced with the precast concrete.
No, that was a large staging area, full like 20-foot right away to drive a crane down in there. That one was a lot more straightforward.
I can say one thing about products for the rebuild of this thing. I study lumber weekly, and treated products are not too bad in the price right now. I mean, of course, lumber is all high, but I can tell you one thing: cedar is out of the question of using any kind of a cedar product on this thing, because the prices are over the moon right now. It's just, I mean, you can't even imagine what cedar prices are right now.
Okay, yeah. Noted. I guess we'll keep that in mind moving forward. Yeah.
Hey, John, getting back to the permitting process, I think that was task 3 in your scope of work. Fish and Game will have to do you mentioned a SEPA checklist hydraulic project, but I think there's also something built in for public review, and then a need for assistance for public notification. So what is that involved? And again, I'm thinking of the landowners who have fences nearby, who have shrubbery nearby, and how do we get the public involved in that? Is that something we do as a city, or is that what WDFW does? WDWF?
I mean, that's through the SEPA process. We have to give public notice on that and put it out for comment. It's a lot like any SEPA notice that goes out for, say, a subdivision. We would just be the applicant as the city.
Yeah, and I'll just say, usually past mayor, and I suspect they will do the same thing. It's always good to have a little conversation with them before they get the SEPA thing in the mail. It's like, what? So usually there's a little grease in the skids ahead of time just to, you know, get people aware of things. So
Yeah, and we can hold a public meeting as well, just, you know, open for public comment. I mean, the adjacent property owners, we always suggest, you know, meeting with them face to face, one-on-one. Whether or not we could get a temporary construction easement from them, well, you know, would be a whole nother story. But if adjacent property owners would be, or at least in the area, would be talking to one-on-one. And then other than that, it would just be the SEPA noticing and, you know, asking for any public comment.
Okay. Anybody else questions for John?
Real quick. So in your initial report, you noted that the tongue and groove decking was probably beneficial to the protection of the structure, that it might have deteriorated further without the tongue and groove. So would that be proposed for the replacement also? I mean, I understand that surface is more likely to deteriorate because of the close connections, but also it sounds like it was helpful in preserving the bridge. So I was curious about that.
I don't know. I think we'd have to talk to some of our contractors that we work with and see, you know, what they would suggest. I guess, you know, I haven't really thought too much about product. We have thrown the Trex out there, you know, thrown it around in our discussions. But I guess we would try to build something that is going to last the longest for the most cost-effective price. I guess is the best way.
there's also membranes and stuff that can be put on the top of the like the vents and stuff as well to help. There's butyls and things like that, which I would suspect somebody would be looking probably to want to recommend on that.
Right, and end caps for those vents.
Yeah,
things
exactly, to what Dennis was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Trex typically has a gap unless the water through. The TNG
Right.
is tight and doesn't, so you have the advantage of one versus the other.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the cost.
Yeah, the TNG kind of acts like a covered bridge,
Right.
the old school covered bridges, but
Well, what you do in those circumstances, and I'm sorry, but when I read me my deck and stuff, you flash the top of those pieces where that deck is going to drain down. You flash it all. You can do. I'd membrane mine. You can use aluminum flashing or steel flashing, but that's what you do to protect from
yeah,
water.
that's what I did. Is I used the membrane as well.
Yeah, I did the membrane too.
And this probably doesn't work. And this, but I would be curious. You know, when you get to the contracts, if they get out of the box, it probably doesn't. But I actually had wondered whether or not if you had the bent, you just said. I mean, if there was a way with the structures to. Probably doesn't work because they're all wood piers, but it was almost like could you slide actually a new bridge like a metal one? I know they're more expensive, but could you just have run it down the path from Elm, drop it, bring it, and then they had a mechanism to slide it out and across? But don't know. That's probably a little bit with all the trees and everything else, and that it might be a little too complicated. But you guys are the engineers.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds interesting.
Just on some other bridge construction projects I've seen where that's kind of been the technique, and it is a straight shot coming off of Elm. It looks like, at least on your drawings.
Yeah, off of Elm, it's pretty straight down. There's a little bit of an angle off of 214th, off of the cul-de-sac.
Right. So,
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Forba?
Just one final question. So you talked about drawing together a bid package early. I'm aware that the contractors are hard to line up these days because they're quite busy. If we were able to get a package together early and receive bids, does it seem likely to you that we would be able to potentially schedule for this summer? Or is there concern that it would be postponed due to contractor availability?
I think that we would have bidders on it. I think the bigger question would be, would the bids be so inflated that, we wouldn't be comfortable spending that amount of money? I'm going to be honest, we've had expensive bids in the past, few months. Inflation's hitting contracting agents, the contractors, just like everyone else. Ductile iron pipe is through the roof right now. I think that if we if I think it would be an attractive project for somebody. But if we had a bid package ready to go in May, I think that we would get bidders on it. I guess. So.
All right.
Good question.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Any last questions for John? All right. Thank you. We'll move forward, and thanks for answering our questions. And
Oh yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Yep, thanks.
All right, moving on to item number 3, discussions with South County Fire for the potential of joining a regional fire authority. Tonight we have with us, I see Deputy Chief Eastman is going to join us.
As is Leslie and Deputy Chief Maxwell.
Wow. All
I know,
right.
full complement.
Mr. Eastman, thank you. Mr. Maxwell, and of course, Leslie, welcome to Briar City Council, our workshop meeting. And we look forward to your presentation and talking about the possibility of a regional fire authority that's joining.
And council, I guess I'll start. And if you guys don't mind, I'll let Leslie introduce herself and Sean introduce himself before we start. So if you guys would let me do that, Leslie, why
Sure,
don't
that'd
you
be good.
start, and Sean, why don't you follow?
Okay, I'm Leslie Hines. I think I've met most of you, and I'm the Public Information Officer at South County Fire. And I live in Brier.
There you go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're looking forward to the conversation. I'm Sean Maxwell. I'm the Deputy Chief that oversees emergency medical and then our community paramedic program. And I've been with you guys since the original contract started in 2005. So pretty familiar, and I actually worked for years down in the Briar station. So quite familiar with your city. So thanks for having us tonight.
And I'm Bob Eastman. I'm one of the deputy chiefs also. I've had the privilege of talking to several of you last week, or maybe it was the week before. Time kind of flies. And then we presented with the fire chief our annual report with you guys last week on Tuesday. And I think I'll start there. I know we had to leave kind of before all the questions were answered. And Mayor, I'm not sure if we want to start with those questions.
No, yes,
or if you want us to go through and do it at the end.
We had to cut off Councilmember Roseman with some questions, and I'm sure she still have that question. So go ahead, Val.
Genius with the mute button, sorry. I was wondering if you had any granularity in the basic life support data that reflects the behavioral health call changes in since the pandemic.
I haven't, I do have the information. We do have that information. I don't have it broke out for Briar. I know Chief Maxwell and his team have been watching that a lot. We can look at that, but I think I'll just let Sean kind of give you what we're seeing overarching, which I think will relate to Briar as well. Sean?
Yeah, I could probably give you more of the qualitative than the quantitative, just in working with my team, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
They have been just in dialoguing with me during the pandemic, the behavioral health, the mental health, the suicide for them. Their experience has been, it's just skyrocketed for them. And they've been overwhelmed with requests for service. They've gotten quite creative, especially during the lockdowns, of getting pretty creative in how we reached out to people. They're very industrious in lots of phone calls, but they got a grant for cell phones, and they'd actually be dropping cell phones on people's doorsteps that couldn't call. And they did all sorts of creative things to try and make those connections. And it was quite incredible how just that weekly contact with some people made all the difference in the world. And I'm trying to think, I mean, I can picture, but early on, I don't know if this group, I think we started our program in 2013, and it was right on the border of Mount Lake Terrace or Briar. And we had a wonderful lady in her 70s or 80s. She was a retired US Air Force and actually retired from Social Security. And she had called 911 89 times and just kept getting put through the system. Been to the hospital, social workers, police, fire, EMS, everybody. And that was one of our first people. So it could have been actually right in Briar. And she was referred into our community paramedic from one of the engine companies or medic units. And he went, and we like to say he went and had a very nice cold cup of coffee with her and visited with her for about an hour, and discovered she had tons of VA and Social Security benefits. And he drove her down to the VA and got her signed up to all the services. And she said, wow, someone finally saw me in the community, and she was good to go, and she no longer needed our services. So I'm sure they just have so many great stories. So I'm sure they were doing many stories like that throughout the pandemic.
And I would add to that, I know the hospitals are seeing a higher incidence of it. I know, the ERs are seeing a higher incidence of behavioral health. I just don't have the numbers. I'm sure we'll look at that as we go and continue to look at what the pandemic, because I think the behavioral health challenge as a result of the pandemic will be something that we will see for years to come post-pandemic, right? I think that's a problem that's not going to stop as a result of us going from a pandemic state to an epidemic state, or wherever the future of COVID takes us. It's something that we'll be dealing with for a while. We were struggling with behavioral health prior to the pandemic, and I think the pandemic has made that more difficult and more challenging for us moving forward.
It was
All right, thank you.
definitely on the rise, even before the pandemic, significantly.
And then I had a second shorter question. Just anecdotally, I was curious if how many of the EMS calls related to traffic incidents during the snowstorm were related to injuries during traffic incidents.
You know what? You asked me that question, and then I didn't go.
I did. I had it written down. I couldn't remember.
I think we talked about it when we had our small little breakout. I will, you know what? Let me go pull. I need to get the dates of that, and I can go pull specifically those 2 days, and I can tell you a breakdown of the calls that happened within the city of Briar that time frame, and I can get it to Paula, and Paula can send it out to the rest of the group. I apologize for that. I knew there was something I was going to forget, and that was it.
I had a note there and I couldn't remember if it was because I asked already or not. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, Mr. Eastman, go ahead. Talk to us a little bit about, we have some information you sent to all of us, so thank you for that.
Yeah, so hopefully that was the documents are from several. Leslie gathered those from several of the folks that have either considered or successfully either annexed into an RFA, like in the case of the city of Arlington, annexing into North County, or some of the frequently asked questions just in general for an RFAs from a few different places, including Mill Creek, and then the documents that we did with the formation. So hopefully that was helpful and answer some questions. And then I think the document that's I think is really important is the RFA plan and the amended plan that we sent out, because that's the equivalent of the charter for the RFA. That's the document that lets us exist, and that's a document that well, it's an amended document, but it's the original one was the one that the voters approved from the city of Linwood and Old Fire District 1 to actually create the RFA. So that is who we are, and that's what governs kind of where we go. So hopefully that gives you some insight into our taxing structure and our revenue stream structure. There's some stuff in there on governance and what future governance would look like if entities if entities were to annex in, how representation happens until such that one of the residents from that geographical area or that geopolitical area can actually run for office, and answered some of those questions for you. And if there's any questions on those, I guess we can take those now. And then I've got a PowerPoint, and I know those kind of are horrible, but I think it shouldn't take us very long, and it'll kind of, I'll use it as an outline to make sure that I touch the high points that I think are important to talk about. And then we'll go from there. So first, is there any questions on the information that you received prior to the meeting? I think we'll start with that.
Bob, Don Moran here. So thank you. I had a chance to look through it. I'm section 6 of the amendment, funding and finance. Are we going to have a chance to talk about that in dollars and cents this evening?
Yep, I will bring some stuff forward, so you'll see some examples, and I think it may not answer your question specifically, but we can answer those specific questions when we get there, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I think what is your presentation going to talk to why you're here today? We obviously have a contract with you folks for a couple more years, 3 actually.
Yeah,
almost.
We'll talk about that. We'll
okay.
talk about that.
All
Also.
right, I just want to make sure if they're going to cover that. Thank you.
So I think if everybody's okay, I'll start. I'll share my screen, and then let me make sure I do it right. Can everybody see the PowerPoint now?
There it is.
Yep.
All right. So first thing, and I will make sure that I get this PowerPoint to Paula when we're done. Just to be honest, I didn't have it totally completed until earlier this afternoon. So this is kind of who we are in picture form. The size of the station, the size of the building. We have 14 fire stations in the RFA, and you can see the station down by the city of Brier is a 3-person station, has an engine and a medic unit. The bigger stations, Station 15 in Linwood, that's one of our busier stations. It's got a battalion chief, an engine, dedicated EMS unit, dedicated medic unit. And in Station 21, we have a dedicated MSO. We have a battalion chief there. We have a 3-person engine that cross-staffs with our technical rescue unit. And then we have a transport unit. It kind of gives you an idea of where the stations are geographically, what they look like. And the bigger the building, the more people they have. The important thing with this one is when we look back at staffing in the RFA, and when we say the RFA, we're going to talk about everybody. We don't discern Briar, Montlake Terrace, Edmonds. We look at the RFA as a whole, and we look at our service that way. If you look in 2017, staffing was reduced at Station 17 by 2 people. That was a result of a renegotiation of the Edmonds agreement. And then if you see in Linwood, up by Lake Street, and up by Mariner High School, since 2017, we've added a total of 6 firefighters on duty every day. And the reason we show this is as a result of call load going up and demand becoming more challenging, and some of the challenges we have with traffic, we're able to move fairly quickly and make deployment changes as needed to meet that demand. One of the challenges that we have operationally with our current contracts, Briar being one of them, is the contract set what the staffing is going to be at the respected stations that provide the service in that area. So, for instance, your contract is based on about 1/3 of the cost of Station 18, 3-person cross-staff station, which means the crews either take the engine or the ambulance when they go on a call. Same thing with the city of Montlake Terrace. They pay for a 3-person station, and it's really hard. We can't just go add resources down there without having the conversation about cost and the dollars and cents associated with increased staffing.
So might I just ask a question? So to that statement, But you also serve with a station that serves Briar right there immediately. You're covering unincorporated Snohomish. You're
Yep.
covering other stuff besides us, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
So are you saying we're binding you because of our contract that you can't add a fourth to cover the other parts of the county if that's what you need, or
So
in that
here's-
area?
Well, we're not totally bound by that, but the challenge is if I put it extra units at Station 18, they would also service the city of Briar. Right. And so you pay a portion of Station 18. So the theory being is if we added another 2-person unit at Station 18, there would be a conversation of paying the portion that would be serving the city of Briar over those times. So
Okay.
we always have the opportunity to add resources wherever we want at the discretion of the RFA, but we get into, and you guys have heard in the news that we don't want to get into a conversation where people are looking at people and saying, you know, one entity subsidizing another entity or entity A subsidizing entity B. We don't want to get in. That's not the game we're in. We're in for providing services and making sure that everything we do is fair and equitable. And part of that is the cost associated with doing that service also.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So Leslie, are you ready to go? Leslie put together, I don't know how many people are familiar with cross-staffing. And the other piece is the number of people that's required for some of your more critical events, like a cardiac arrest, which we need between 10 and 12 people at. Leslie's put in a thing that actually illustrates it very, very well. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let her share. If that's okay, maybe. Go ahead, Leslie.
You have to let me know if it's sharing here.
You had it there for a minute.
Okay.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. And I just need to get the video thing set right. Okay, there we go.
Brier Fire Station 18 is staffed by a crew of 3, 1 captain, 1 firefighter EMT, and 1 firefighter paramedic. The fire engine and medic unit at the fire station are cross-staffed. What is cross-staffing? Firefighters will be dispatched with the apparatus most appropriate for the 911 emergency. If they are responding to an EMS call, they respond in the medic unit. If they are responding to a fire call, they respond in the fire engine. Now we'll look at an example of how neighboring stations work together. Station 18 is dispatched to a 911 call for medical emergency at Briar Elementary School. Firefighters at the station respond in Medic 18 to the school. While they are at the school, a 911 call comes in for someone in cardiac arrest in Briar. This serious medical emergency requires 10 to 12 firefighters. Since Station 18 is already on a 911 call, crews from Station 19 in Mount Lake Terrace, Station 15 in Linwood, and Station 22 in Hilltop respond to the cardiac arrest call in Briar. Briar Fire Station 8.
Oops. So that's the video there.
So sometimes cross-staffing, people have a hard time. We use cross-staffing and throw that term out. That's not very common in the fire service across the country. And so we felt it was important to make sure that when we talk cross-staffing, people know what that means. And I think the other piece of that is to realize that Station 18 is our Briar Fire Station, that Station 19, Station 22, and Station 15 also provide lots of service within the city of Briar as a result of us being one service area, and every station is supportive of each other, and a way to illustrate that. So let me go back and did my screen share?
This is your desktop.
No, then I did the wrong one.
We just saw your desktop there for a minute.
Yeah, technology is great when you can use it. If you can't use it, right? It's embarrassing. All right, that's better.
That works.
All right. So I think Councilman Marley wanted this. So we had their GIS guy, Steve Wheeler, go back and look at the same fire stations Leslie just talked about with in her example of cross staffing and a response. We looked at 1 a.m. in the morning. Steve picked 6-hour blocks, and I took the best drive time and then the most constricted time to give an idea of just what the road network looks like. At 1 in the morning, this is the outer edge is 6 minutes. So this is 6 minutes drive time from station 18. This is at 1 in the morning at station 18. This is what happens at 6 o'clock in the afternoon at station 18. You see how that's reduced. I did not get the number of road miles that you reduced during that time. I just forgot to ask Steve that. If you look at, here's station 19, 1 o'clock in the morning, you see its service area. You see how it shrinks at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Station 22 up at Hilltop, off of North Road. That one doesn't shrink as much as some of the other ones, but it still does. Station 15. And then they get significantly less road miles in the day. And you see that across the whole RFA. And when we do that, part of our standard of cover, which is response modeling we did in 2019 with a consultant, we did that work with all our stations. And when you look at a 6-minute drive time from each station, and look at the worst time to travel, which is between 2 and 7 o'clock in the day, you'll see right around here, just at 2/16 and 99 or 2/15 and 99, there's a big gap that nobody can get to in 6 minutes. We've identified that as needing an infill fire station. You see another gap on Alderwood Mall Parkway by the Spaghetti Bowl. And you see again up just north of Lake Stickney at Alpha Manor. Not surprising for us, but it wasn't that long ago where we didn't have tunable street data that would give us traffic based on real-time traffic. And so there's the updated drive times, Councilman Marley, for you to look at. And I think it's relevant to the conversation we have, because those 3 stations we looked at are really, when station 18 needs more than 1 unit going, that's where they come from. And if station 18 happens to be committed on a call, 19, 22, and 15 are who's actually coming in to back them.
So that, of course, that always begs the question, how often has that happened for us?
Well, I will say on your ALS calls, which is, I want to say 40%. I have to go back and look at your annual report. You're getting 2 units on those type of calls. And so probably 40% of the time of your calls, you're getting more than station 18 responding, just as a result of an ALS response by dispatch. We typically send 2 units to those. And so it's harder to look at when a unit's going in when 18's unavailable. It's easy. I can do it, but it's much more complex. It's not as simple. It's a more in-depth analysis, and I haven't done that yet. This is as a result of our conversation with the city of Brier, is just giving you a financial picture of where the RFA is at. So this is our 2021 amended budget, and you can see our revenue stream, you can see the expenses, and you can see our ending cash balance. This is the adopted 2022 budget. You can see the projected revenues, the projected expenses, and then you can see the general fund's ending cash balance at the end of 2022. The RFA has 7 reserve funds. The top row is what we call our ABLE It's our apparatus replacement schedule. It's our equipment replacement schedule. And then it's our building / land / major repair. And if you look at the top, you see the beginning cash balances in each one of those. You can see the revenue. If there's a revenue stream that comes into it, most of the time it's from property taxes. You can see the expense that's projected for 2022. And then you can see the ending cash for the following year, even though it says ending cash. Whoops, sorry. The emergency fund is our emergency rainy day emergency fund. We have a compensated absences fund that actually is used for, and it's funded annually based on anticipated retirements. Finance has a methodology. They used to do that. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. We have a left one reserve fund, as you know. Fire District 1 in the city of Linwood has retired left one firefighters. And there's a requirement for us to provide them health care and pay for medical expenses once they retire. We have a left one fund. We typically fund that with insurance. We either use it with our insurance, or we pay for Medicare, one of the Medicares for those that are Medicare age. And then they put money away every year into this fund to, at some point in time, hopefully have it be funded where the left reserve will fund the remainder of the left one liability, and it won't have to come out of the general fund, or we won't have to pay insurance premiums on it.
Did I hear you correctly that you said you don't have any more? Everybody that's on left one has now retired. Did I hear that correctly?
Yep, they are retired. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, Paula, do we still have, just for new council members, we have had one person retired that was on a left one. Are they still?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He took the left one dive early. He'll be around for a while.
Yeah.
Was that on the fire side or law
No,
enforcement?
it wasn't. It
That
was
was
a
law
no.
enforcement. We've never
Yeah.
we've never employed our own
Right.
actual fire people that I know of.
But it is a very real, because you're on the hook all the way along. And actually, Paula even had us do some stuff to just take care of long-term care just in case, because the risk exposure to us, because you're effectively self-insured at that point. So
Yes. And we have long-term care on several of them, but sometimes you can't get long-term care. So you're on the hook for that as the employer to cover those. You either pay for the premium, or you actually have to pay for the long-term care. And we have it as part of the formation of the RFA, the left one, the fire left one liability from the city of Linwood came to the RFA also. It followed, and so that's what that fund's for. Hopefully it'll be, at some point in time in the future, it'll be fully funded, and no dollars will come from the general fund to deal with that liability. It'll be funded. We are self-insured for healthcare, and so we have a reserve account that deals with that. That deals with you have to have 16 weeks of anticipated expenditures, and that based on what the actuary and what the state says. That's really a non-discretionary fund. It's there, but we don't get to do much with it. So that's our reserve accounts, and you can see the ending cash balance in all of those. And then I think most people are familiar with property tax and EMS levy, and the benefit charge is new. This is the second year for the RFA and the benefit charge. I think it's important just to say what the benefit charge is. The benefit charge isn't a tax. When you actually go to the ballot and the voters approve a benefit charge, as a fire district or an RFA, you forfeit the third 50 cents of your general levy capacity. When the RFA is formed, our general levy could be maxed at $1.50 per thousand. When we implemented and were approved of the benefit charge, that goes to $1. So the max right now that our general fire levy can be is $1. Initially, when we created when we asked for the benefit charge, it's a 60% vote. Does not require validation. There's a limit. The benefit charge can only be set at 60% of your operating budget. In 2022, our benefit charge was 7.64% of our budget. As I said, it drops your regular levy to $1. Currently, the initial benefit charge is good for 6 years. We're in year 2. At that point, just like a 6-year EMS levy, you have to go back and we will have to renew it. And we have a couple options. We can renew it to 6 or 10 years with a simple majority vote with no validation. And recently the statute changed where we actually can make it permanent. But if we go and renew permanent, it requires a 60% favorable vote with no validation. The benefit charge is unique. It's based on improvements. So the structures, what's built on the property. It's not based on how much the property's worth or how much the building that's on the property is worth. It's solely based on the size, how many square feet it is, and then what it's used for. And some people would say that's more fair. For an example, if you had a 2,000 square foot house and one was $400,000 and one was $1 million, the benefit charge for both those properties is exactly the same. And in the current benefit charge for the RFA, it's $70.03 is the benefit charge for a 2,000 square foot house. So once again, it doesn't take into account the value of your property. It's based on the improvements and what the property is used for. Benefit charge typically, and the next slide will show that. I'll stop there. The benefit charge is set annually by the board. So the board sets it annually. There's a public hearing as part of that process. And then the benefits need to be measurable, and that's right out of the statute. So that's really what the benefit charge is. This is a little bit more complex because it's the components of it. It's not as complicated as it looks, and they use the fire flow formula to NFPA, which is what we use to calculate on the fire ground of how much water we need to use, how much water we need to have flowing to extinguish a fire. So if you have 50% of a 50,000 square foot building on fire, you do the math and you need X amount of gallons per water to put it out. What we do is we take the square footage, so all the square footage in the city of Brier, you do the math. The cost per gallon is nothing but a factor to break down the value you want or how much money you want to collect on the benefit charge, dividing it by the total square footage of the city. That's one multiplier. And then we in RFA, we have 4 categories. One's residential, single family homes. We have mobile homes, multi-unit, which the city of Brier doesn't have any, and then commercial properties. And then our commercial properties are broke down into 6 additional subcategories based on size. So 0 to 5,000, 5,000 to 20,000 square feet, and then anything over 200,000 square feet is our largest category. And then one of the unique things with the benefit charge is you can proportion what part of the benefit charge is going to be associated to each classification of property. So in the RFA of our benefit charge, 66% of the benefit charge is proportioned to residential properties. So all the residential properties in the RFA then through the math have to contribute 66% of the benefit charge. And that's based on the breakdown of square footage. So the percentage of the whole. And then we take a little bit of call demand, look at residential fires, and then look at commercial fires and multifamily fires and know that the larger fires use more resources and typically take more time and have more risk. And so we move the proportion a little bit. But that's how it's proportioned out. And then the rest of it's math. And then there are discounts. For us, we give a 10% discount for commercial and multifamily sprinkled square footage. We would love to be able to do residential square footage as a discount. The problem is the county does not have that data. One of the things we're limited to with this is we pull the data from the county assessor. And so if the data is not in the county assessor's data set, we can't use it to do something. So for example, if we wanted to give discount for residential properties that are sprinkled, the county would have to have the data to be able to apply it. And right now the county database does not have that information in it. And then any of your senior or low income bet or reductions you get on your property tax is automatically attributed to the benefit charge. So folks who get senior discount, low income discount on property taxes, that is also provided with the benefit charge. And then churches are exempt. Schools are exempt from the benefit charge by statute, and so is housing authority properties now. That was a recent change here about 4 years ago. I know that's a lot, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the benefit charge, and we can take more questions when if you want to. How about I pause there and ask any questions before we move forward? Okay, I'll move forward.
Well, maybe just a comment on that. Sprinklers, it'd be nice for the county to have a plan to collect that data. You know, we just passed an ordinance here for houses over a particular size to have sprinklers built in. It'd be good to have some benefit to the property owners for that.
We would agree. And I've had conversations with the assessor to do that. It's just going to take some time for them to do it.
Sure.
I just a story back in 2010, 2009, 10, when at the time Fire District 1 was looking to do the benefit charge, the county data was in a place where we couldn't do it. And so the counties made great strides to make the data. They've improved it all the time. So I see, especially as cities do what the city of Brier did and put sprinkler ordinances in place, I see there's value in having the city collect that. It takes time, and once they do that, though, we can easily give that credit to residential properties that are sprinkled. I think that would be a great idea too.
Sure.
So I don't know if everybody's familiar with this, but so the reason I bring this up is I think it's important for the city council to understand the statutory limits with regards to what your property tax limitations are and what impact, if you were to annex into the RFA, what does that mean? And so currently, you're the bar graph on the left. You're a city that part of the library district. And as a result of you becoming part of the library district, you have a statutory limit of $3.60 per thousand for property tax. And the first 50 cents, if the library district's at their full 50 cents, that means that the city can tax up to $3.10 per thousand on property tax. Not that you would go there, but the important thing to say is, let's say you were at $3.20 because the library was at 30 cents instead of 50. And if you were at 320, the minute the library went to 50 cents, you would lose 10 cents of your property tax and only be able to go to 310 because of the statutory limit, right? And so for one of the ways, and I hate to say it this way, but the library district becomes senior then, and it's because you are now, as a city, not providing that service. You've annexed into the library district and they're providing it. Part of the 360 was for you to be able to provide those services as a city. So in the middle scenario is the RFA. If you were to annex into the RFA, and if the library was at 50 cents and we were at $1, the max that the city would be able to have their property tax levy at is $2.10, because you can only do a total of 360. And the reason I left the slide the graph to the right was for those that were part of the 9-entity RFA back in the day. This was one of the challenges, is if you remember back then, for those that were there, a lot of the cities were at $1.60, $1.65, $1.72, $1.74 per thousand because of the time. And if the RFA would have been, or the fire authority would have been formed with those, the cities would have had to drop their property tax mill rate to $1.60 because the fire authority would have been at $1.50 and the library would have been at 50 cents. So really what I just want to make sure that the council knows is that, annexing into the RFA, if we're maxed at $1 and the library is maxed at $1, the max the city can be is $2.10 based on the $3.60 statutory limit that the city has. And I don't believe, Paula, you guys don't have any fireman fund pensions or any pensions of the old that that they have the
No.
ability to go do property tax or any of that. Okay.
No.
Okay. So this is really busy, but really what we want to talk about is the RFA has been working on a comprehensive facilities plan, capital facilities plan since 2016, and it was finally the phase 2 is finally approved in January of this year. And what you're seeing is what has been identified as capital needs. And the reason I bring it up is I just want the city to know the RFA has identified, you know, of Station 23, Station 22, Station 14 of our existing operational stations. Our Station 22 and 23 were built in 1970, 72, and are at end of life and need to be torn down and rebuilt. We've done that. Station 21 was the same vintage. We replaced that not that long ago. And then other stations are at an age where we need some seismic renovations to them. We have, as we've grown, you know, we need to look long-term at support infrastructure needs, central warehousing, facility maintenance, potentially apparatus maintenance. Currently, we do that with the city of Linwood. The facilities plan was identified as a 25 to 30 year outlook on capital needs for the RFA. And then we've identified 4 gaps in service delivery. We've talked about Alderwood Mall Parkway. We talked about the property up at Manor by Lake Stickney. And then what we call the Heights, which is at 216th to 212th and Highway 99 as stations that we need to consider putting fire stations in the future. Even though, the demand is there today, but those stations will also let us address future demand. And so I think right now, if we were to build out and starting today, which we can't, right now, the full meal deal, which includes Station 19 and 17, which are contract stations that the RFA doesn't control, it's about a $234 million comprehensive plan for the next 20 to 25 years. Just wanted the council to know that's something that we've been working on for a long time. We finally identified what the future needs are. There's no plans yet to do anything with it. I think we're looking for property for the Alderwood Mall Parkway. And we're talking to Verdant with the Value Village property there at 215th and 99. And Station 22 at Hilltop, that site is too small to rebuild that station on. So we need to acquire, we need to do something different there. So we are moving forward on looking for property. But we still have lots of work to do with regards to the funding options and stuff associated with that. But I wanted the council to know the RFA has this plan. And as you notice, Station 18 is not on it, nor is Station 21 and nor is Station 10. Those are the 3 most current fire stations that we've had built. And we built those right when we had them built. So the seismic renovations and that is not needed at those 3 facilities, because I'm going to say we got it right the first time, which is good to say. City of Briar. So here's our here's currently where we are with Briar. We entered into agreement with the city of Briar in 2005 to provide fire and EMS services under contract. It was initially a 20-year deal. Set to, the initial 20-year term is set to expire December 31st of 2024. And then the agreement's written that after that it renews in successive 5-year periods, unless either one of the 2 parties is required to give a 2-year notification if we're going to terminate. And then we talk about the contract payments. You pay January for the first 3 months of the year, so you pay 3 months ahead, and you pay in 4 installments. And then in the city of Briar, transports that are done out of the city of Briar, the RFA retains those cost, or change those transport fees. Cost methodology for the current contract. So the way the current contract was set up, and this was back in 2004 and 5 when we were having the conversation, it's based on the station labor cost. So what we did is took the cost of the firefighters in the station, and there's some multipliers in there. So because we need 3 captains or 4 captains at our stations, and when captains are on vacation, I need to pay folks to act. So we have a multiplier. So for every captain's position, so there's 1 captain's position 18, we use a multiplier of 4.582 of the average of my captains in the department to come up with the cost of the labor side in that. We do the same thing for the medic. We do the same thing for firefighter. And then that gives you the cost of the firefighters operating out of the station. Then we add 10% for maintenance and operations. We add 10% for admin overhead. And then that becomes your station cost, right? And then we took, when the contract was first done, we looked at the apparatus that were there, calculated things out 20 years, rolled it back with a 4% escalator. So in 20 years, we collected enough revenue to replace the apparatus as needed within the replacement schedule, as it was defined when we entered in the agreement originally. And those were all a little bit different because it was based on the age of the fire department or the fire apparatus and the medic unit we got at the time. And then you pay for fire marshal and deputy fire marshal services as a second piece, and then those are added together, which comes up to the contract cost. And the city pays, I think it's 33.9% of Station 18's cost, and that's how we calculate it. One of the challenges with that is that over time, things change, and we've added EMS supervision on the street, MSOs that are on duty 24 hours a day, that aren't reflected in the station cost model. We've added with the consolidation of Linwood, we've added battalion chief coverage, and which is not, as a whole, that's not incorporated in the cost methodology. We've added the community resource paramedic program. Initially, that was a grant from the city or from Verdant. And over time, that grant has gone away, and now the CRP program is fully funded out of the general fund of the RFA. And so there's some need to have some conversations about that and what does it look like. And we've identified through our standard of cover and the consultant work that we did in 19, that there's need for additional resources down in the Malt Lake Terrace Briar area for call demand. And we know that a 2-person unit, as a result of the enhancements we made to the city of Edmonds, a 2-person unit 24 hours a day is just over 1.5 million. And so there's the need to have those conversations at some time in the future as a result. So here's the cost breakdown, and so let me explain this. The top 2 rows, Briar has seen significant increases in AV over the last few years, as you probably are well aware. So this is your 2022 AV. It's just over 1.7 billion. That came from the county assessor. The current contract is based on 2020 labor wages. As you guys know, or maybe you don't know, is we settled the contract in 2020, and we're already a year behind, and they're currently negotiating 21's labor agreement. So we're a little bit behind. So that will be updated of your current contract cost when that's settled.
To be clear, we've set aside the monies knowing that your contracts are taking time. We don't want to be in a hole. So we do set that aside, expecting it to increase.
Yes. And I know Kathleen would give the cities, and I think she did, Paula, I'm sure she gave it to you, the anticipated increases that they're seeing based on coal and kind of where things are at. So I don't think it's a total surprise of what the cost comes out, because I think she tries to keep you informed of what they have.
And we carry it forward every year. I added the extra percentage each year, and then the following years. until you guys send me a bill and say, hey, here's what you need to pay.
Well, we're hoping that we get out of that cycle and get ahead of the curve. And I think things are actually going well. And I anticipate that we can get out of the rut we've been in over the last few contract cycles and get out of that. And so, and as everybody knows, that I think this last June to June was the inflation was 6.2, I think, for CPIW. I want to say in December it was 7.7. So we're looking at inflationary numbers that I don't think we've seen in a long time, at least what we've seen over the last few.
You
months.
have COLA caps, though, I assume, on the contract.
We don't. Well, we're the contract right now, we're negotiating it. So there's no caps because the contract doesn't, right? We're negotiating the terms of them now. So
the last contracts have not had COLA.
They haven't had caps. They haven't had caps.
Okay.
They haven't had caps.
Gotcha.
So that's where you are today. And I know one of the conversations, what happens if you were part of the RFA today? And I can calculate that. If you take your 2022 AV, our current fire levies at 93 cents, our current EMS levies at 42 cents. And I've rounded these, so the cents are a little different. So if you do the math with 93 and 42, you'll come up with just a little bit different because I pulled the exact number from the county's assessor's roll and put it in so the numbers match what we're actually charging. So I've rounded them just so everybody knows. And then I actually have the ability to calculate what the benefit charge would be in the city of Brier with our 2022 benefit charge calculated. So go ahead.
Now our EMS levy right now is sitting at 28 cents.
That's yours. This
Yeah.
is as if you were in the RFA. So,
Okay, you're just saying
these
what we would
numbers-
max out at.
These numbers assume you were part of the RFA in 2022.
Okay.
And we're
Okay.
levying taxes to give you, I mean, I think it's fair. We need to give you a comparison of what that looks like. And so this is as close as I could come. So in 2022, with the fire levy, EMS levy, and the benefit charge, it'd be a total of $1.46 equivalent. Right. I'm going to say 2.5 just because it's easy math. There's a couple of things I want to say though, is in the RFA as a whole, the benefit charge is equivalent to 16 cents per thousand. So what you see is the benefit that the benefit charge has on residential properties, because the majority of your parcels and your square footage in your city is residential. The benefit of the RFA is with the city of Linwood and District 1, we have a very large commercial base now, and we have several multifamily parcels, which is nice. And so now, one thing I want to talk about is we know the cost of providing service in Briar because we're doing it now. So I will also tell you, I've done, and I haven't done it with your most current AV, but the RFA wouldn't need to be at 93 cents a thousand in the general levy if the city of Briar annexed in, because I don't need that much money to provide the service we're currently providing. What that allows us to do is to, everything being equal, we would be able to reduce the general fire levy. I want to say with the city of Briar, it's 2 to 2.5 cents. And we would collect the same exact amount of money we're collecting today. And and like for the city of Mill Creek, we would have the ability to reduce mill rate by about 6 cents.
Yep.
And be able to do the same work we're doing.
Yeah, and Mill Creek though was dealing with Fire District 7, right?
Yes.
And they had their set of unique challenges, I'll just say.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say though is to keep the dollar amount. In other words, what I showed you in let me back up. The 7.6 million is what our revenue needs are. If the city of Briar was annexed into the RFA, I wouldn't need to collect 93 cents per thousand to meet that revenue stream. I could actually reduce the general levy as a whole. I want to say it's
Yeah.
2.5 cents.
Well, if I call it 2.5 off of 146, it's 1.7%.
Nope, right.
So it's, I mean, that's just what that savings is. So you take 2.5 million and drop it by 1.7%, but it's still more than double where we are at the moment.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you are, absolutely.
Something you mentioned, and so I'll set aside all the other nuances we get into dollars here and there, and there's some things we have to look at our numbers and projections, obviously going forward, and knowing that, you know, we do have 2024 coming at the end of 2024 on contracts and stuff. You said the relative cost per call, 33.9%, I think is what you said, that Brier is for station. We're accounting for, I should say, 33.9% of the cost of station 18, if I have that right.
Yep.
And then there's other call numbers I'd be interested in, but for now, what percentage of the calls out of station 18 are supporting Brier?
I would have to go pull that. I think Brier's running. I'd have to go look.
Because the way I remember is we're a pretty low number. I mean, we're 400 and some calls for
442 in 2022.
420 and what? Yeah, 422. So I was just reading it. So you take that and we're not quite 8,000 people, but number of, roughly 19 people per every one call. I was just curious how that compares out to how the other, like a Montlake Terrace or others and such. So I was just kind of curious how we compare out to the load we put on the station versus the surrounding communities.
Great question.
We can get that information.
That'd be cool.
I was tinkering with a few numbers before the meeting today, and I'll admit now that I was way low in my estimates now based on what I'm seeing for the 2022 assessed value. But based on the average call volume of 432 calls per year to Brier, and that's averaged over the last 3 years, what we budgeted through the end of 2021, that works out to $3,036 per visit is what we've been assessed, or what we've paid, so to speak, for those visits. Per person who lives in Brier, per resident, it's about $192 per resident for EMS services. Per household, that works out to $529 per household per year. Now, I had followed the model of Bill Creek, and I'd seen that the prices went up about 66%. But now that I see the figures here of $2.5 million for our services going forward, taking that by an average of 432 calls a year, that brings our total cost up to about $1,000 per household, $5,787 per call. So we go from $3,000 per call up to $5,700 per call. We go from $529 per household up to $1,000 per household. So those would be some good numbers that we'd want to corroborate, I think. And going back to Martin's point, how does that compare to maybe some of the adjoining districts that are maybe using the services more vigorously than ourselves? It's a pretty big jump, just to me. Don't mean to kill the conversation. I was just
no, Don, you're absolutely on the right types of questions, and I think there's other conversations that happen, not necessarily at this workshop and future, and what the mayor has and some things. But I think, I certainly appreciate and understand where the district is coming from. Their perspective, they say, look, we look at the whole RFA. At the same time, we come from our perspective of, we had to go with contract. That's what we've always had to do. We certainly are not going to fund our own fire test. And at the time, and noted that numbers don't quite add up these days for costs, set aside some of the nuances of what the RFA has brought in or other costs that may be things that they know that were done with verdant stuff. I think that, there will have to be some type of cost adjustment. That's clear. And then whether or not the Fire District is willing to look at things with contracting still. I certainly understand the push for RFA, but I think that this is, and I remember this back in the early conversations way back when, and even, as you mentioned, Chief, when we went through the original RFA, and I remember even Linwood had a challenge because they were paying for a lot of their emergency services through taxes in 2008 hit, right? And also, there was a lot of things that they were like, wait, we've got to suddenly ask people for a bunch more money when we're getting it out of sales tax. So there were things, and of course, we're trying to be very responsible for our citizens and how we, they're spending their money and have that confidence. So I think that there are things that's why when I ask questions about how are we doing for our number of calls, what Don's asking, for us all to really look at that. And, I think it's reasonable we pay our fair equitable share. I think whatever that looks like, I don't have a problem with that. It's just been in the past, the RFA numbers they're so hard for us to pencil out because of at least how we've traditionally been with the single family home, number of call volume, those types of things. That's just been where the challenge is. I would hope that as we work and have these conversations with the fire district, that can be appreciated, as we're looking at the numbers.
And I think we totally understand that. We've been good partners from day one.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll be good partners for years to come. I don't see that changing, and this is just the conversation to get things going. And
appreciate it.
And honestly, these are the questions that have to be answered, right? These in every other consolidation effort we've ever talked about, including City of Mill Creek, City of Linwood, these are the conversations that we have to have, and they're good conversations, right?
Yeah, and we have to be able to, look, if we would have said, in the end, we thought RFA was totally the right way, we have to tell the citizens, this is how we as council believe this to be, and this is the right thing, or this is where we're coming at. Frankly, I was a little disappointed in Mill Creek's FAQ. There were a couple things that had nothing to do with you guys. It's just they kind of hand waved part of their description, but I know, what they were going to do on some of the details about, we might have to, if you don't do it, and they didn't really give tangible numbers. And I will freely admit that I believe, and I know this council, we will really want to break the numbers down and really understand the costs and what our options are for our citizens.
Agree.
And I guess the last slide is just the process for annexation. And this is the technical stuff of the steps required if the city's going to entertain it. Here's the things that need to happen. There's a need to do a SEPA review. It's a non-project. It's fairly simplistic. The city needs to adopt a resolution that requests annexation. That comes to the RFA. The RFA receives the resolution requesting, and then there's some pre-annexation things that happen. For us, it's relatively simple. We already have a contract. So covering the cost associated between the time the city becomes officially annexed into the RFA, and we can levy taxes. We have a contract that covers the costs associated with that. It's pretty simplistic. There's no assets to transfer. There's no station to transfer. It becomes a fairly simple process. We'll need to have a conversation about fire marshal services, and then any other thing that may come up, and have that conversation. The RFA, once they receive the request to annex, then amends the RFA plan that amends the plan with the city of Brier being part of the RFA. It addresses the boundaries and changes the map and that, and then the board adopts that. That then goes back to the city. And then if there's any other documents that need to be agreed on between the two, they're negotiated and action taken by both parties. And then the city council would need to adopt the amended plan, and then put a resolution to put the measure to ballot, and then the stuff associated with that. There's pro-con committees and those other kind of things. And then the one thing I will say is that in order for the RFA to levy taxes the following year, the boundaries of the RFA need to be set by August 1st of the previous year. And so that was an important conversation with the city of Mill Creek, which is what drove them to a special election, because the boundaries have to be set by August 1st of 2023 or 2022 for the RFA to levy taxes in the city of Mill Creek in 2023 or 2023. For us, it's a little bit different because we have a current contract, which gives us a whole lot of flexibility with regards to timing and such. So, and I will say that we're having, at least with staff in the city of Motley Terrace, have had preliminary conversations with city of Motley Terrace's staff, very similar to the conversations we've had with the mayor and Paula. We haven't actually met with any of the electeds yet, but we anticipate that happening, at least to entertain the conversation like we're having with you guys tonight. So, and with that, I think I'll stop. That was a lot. And see if there's any remaining questions from the council. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay, so we can see each other.
Okay, thanks. Questions? A lot of information here. Obviously, we thank you for the documents you provide as well.
And I will provide Paula with the PowerPoint, so you guys don't have to remember it. I'll send it, and
Thank you.
and she'll have it. So
Great.
and I apologize for not getting to you ahead of time. It's just been one of those 2-year cycles, right? The last 2 years have been that way for everybody.
That's okay. You still would have got the same questions.
But I would have liked for you to been able to, instead of reading it on the screen, to be able to read it in front of you.
Yeah.
Reading on the screen can be challenging. And
yeah, and I have to remember, having been through with the mayor quite a number of months of prior RFA discussion, I probably have a slightly different take on some of those numbers.
Yep.
Let me tell you, there were a lot of them.
Yeah. Any other questions for Bob? Yeah, go ahead, Val.
So I noticed in the service level, sorry, I don't know the acronym, the service delivery, the 6-minute map. I noticed that the southern part of Briar is a stretch even during the 1 o'clock time frame. And I was curious what sorts of agreements occur across King County line if there's additional support that comes from the south, if it's an extenuating circumstance. And then furthermore, that area south Briar lines up also with some of the area of socioeconomic concern in our region. The state has the map that details the different factors that identify our socioeconomically challenged areas, and that is one of them. So we'd see higher health challenges, we see lower income, and we see higher need for intervention in different ways. So knowing that, I'm just curious what current service and future service ideas are around better supporting that area.
So we have automatic mutual aid agreement. So automatic. So at time of call with Shoreline, with North Shore, with Bothell. And so Bothell, I don't know how close North Shore is. Bothell comes in from the east and covers that further. I have that map.
They're on 228th, right?
Yeah,
Top of the hill.
Yep, top of the hill.
So Station 44 comes in too. And then we get support from Shoreline, North Shore, and the agencies on the north side, King County too. And those are automatic aid, right? There can be, just because they're dispatched from a different dispatch agency. But I will say Shoreline, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Shoreline carry our pagers? They used to. There's ways we can alert our true right on the border neighbors quickly. And they come in mutual aid with no hesitation and automatically. So if you had a call that happened down in the border of Briar and King County, my guess is you would get a King County unit in one of our units.
I think it'd be the one. Which station, or maybe it's stations, but serves Lake Forest Park?
in
Yeah,
that
it's,
Kenmore.
I don't know if is that the Kenmore, is that the North Shore station? That's all the way.
Well, but it is, I don't, you know what? I don't know that.
Because I did a little looking on the Google Maps, and the only North Shore one I spotted close by was actually, well, it was close. Isn't it close by the old Knoll Lumber or something like? I'm kind of that's real rough.
So North Shore tends to be further away. It's Bothell and Shoreline that are predominantly who we get.
Yeah, Bothell is the one that looked. They're down the hill, right? For them.
Station 44 is really quick into Brier. They're right along with Station 19 and Station 22. And we do automatic mutual aid with them. So they, at the time we have a response, they get toned when we get toned. And so if there's a delay, if any, it's because they have to go through their dispatch center to get dispatched.
And I'll add, Bob, there are some nuances that, you know, the way we deploy on having a paramedic at every station, probably in King County, a community like Briar wouldn't have a paramedic that close. Whereas Shoreline, I think they have 1.5 medic units that cover all of Shoreline and Bothell. Whereas you actually have a paramedic unit probably closer than the way they cover King County. As we have a paramedic in every station. So there are nuances there. It might be a little further distant, but you're probably going to get a paramedic significantly faster.
Yeah, that's actually something I've always appreciated about is been the paramedics at the station. That's been something that's been a nice especially knowing the type of calls, and you went over it last week, right? The type we get, that's by far and away the most calls. The ALS, yeah.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Any other questions? Okay. That's lots of information that I'm sure if any of the council members have any further questions that they can reach out to South County Fire, and Bob would be happy to answer. In the meantime, if there's nothing else, I want to thank South County Fire for their ongoing partnership with us and the help that they provided and the information. And I'm sure there's going to be more questions as we move our way forward, as we anticipate what we might do with respect to our contract and considering the proposal tonight. So thank you, guys. And we'll let you go unless you want to stick around.
Nope. And like I said, if you have questions, feel free to, Paula, you can forward them. We'll answer them as you have them. We don't have to meet again to answer them. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. And if we ever need to come back and you guys want us to come back and have conversations, please just let us know. We're here to continue the conversation, and
appreciate it.
We're here for you.
All right.
And that was a great PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. All right.
He got the number I was trying to find earlier today, which was what was our assessed value for the city. The different sites I kept pulling up was, no, I don't want the average per house.
All right, we have a couple last things. I think we have a fuel purchase to consider, Paula, is that right? From Steve?
We do.
This is not at the low spot right now. But
Yeah,
when do you do it?
If any of you know when a good time to buy fuel is.
Sooner the better. It could get very expensive in a few days.
Yeah. Well, if can we lock it in before Russia goes into Ukraine?
That's unlikely.
It's already an issue with the fact that we didn't buy in the fall, because we're looking at a much higher.
Oh yeah, I mean, we don't pay the taxes, but man, it.
So here you see this
taxes. We don't get out of
Is
all.
our Safeway rewards?
No, Safeway rewards doesn't count either.
Oh, darn it.
So here we have from Public Works Superintendent Smith, fuel purchase diesel and gasoline products. As you can see, it's not cheap.
We don't buy red diesel.
What was that?
Don't we buy red diesel?
I don't even know what that is.
mean?
That was an 80s band, wasn't it? Red Diesel.
Usually government entities like Metro and everybody uses red fuel, which is farm fuel, really. It doesn't have the same amount of taxes on it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
we have lowered taxes, but you don't get out of all of them.
We don't get red fuel, huh? Okay.
Anyway, here we are looking at not to exceed $40,000 worth of fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the projected, so you this will fill the tanks up, and then how long will that go for us before you're
Well, so
or you're not filling them
we
up?
haven't gotten fuel in almost 2 years.
I was gonna say I had seen something come through. Okay.
So this would, you know.
Yeah, we
Steve
probably should have been, we try to not make it as big a dollar cost averaging, as they say.
Yeah,
You know,
I was just gonna say that.
All right. So this is what will come before you at our next meeting.
yeah, probably better to get on
Do
it
it. Yes.
right
get on
now
it.
because all indications say it isn't going down anytime soon.
Well, and that's why I brought it with me tonight, was because, you know, I talked to Steve about it and I'm like, March 1st would be the next time we could workshop it with him. And I said, that number might have to be higher if we wait that long.
You know, it's unfortunate. I mean, this would have been one, and I get that it was all less, but I would have been willing to do an emergency temporary council meeting, you know, thing just to get this approved and
Yeah.
free them up to move.
Yeah.
Well, to Martin's point, do we have to buy the entire volume, or can we buy a quantity for 6 months and then watch prices at 6 months and buy the next quantity? Do we have to?
So the
Gambling.
costs related to having it delivered each time, you get nailed with those. It's easier to, and you get a better price when you have the big load come in than if you have a smaller load, because if you have a smaller load, they charge you more.
Yeah, I think, Mike, just to be clear, my comment was, you know, we probably even back last fall, would normally just been a cycle. We'll look at it and then we think it's a good opportunity to jump on it. But a lot of changes in the last 2 years, so I get kind of how it slipped through the cracks.
I
But
mean,
It didn't slip. We were looking at it
It
and
just-
we were hoping
winging a prayer.
to see lower prices in February like we normally do. And the answer to that would be no.
Yeah.
If
Thank you,
anybody-
pandemic.
If anybody here is a future fuel price expert,
Right.
you could tell us now and tell us what 6 months from now, what fuel prices will.
You know, it's like trying to decide what your interest, when I remember when interest rates, I was trying to buy a house and it was changing so bad, there's fine, just lock it in and go. And probably we're just better to probably just do it.
Every year they go up for the summertime anyway.
Yeah.
Every year.
True.
Can I
They're
give a high
forecasting
level? Oh,
a
sorry.
significant jump this summer, though, regardless of what happens in Ukraine.
Yeah, I agree.
Val?
Can I get a high level understanding of the tanks are 9,000 gallons each, I'm understanding, and then we let them get to approximately half and bump it up, or we go down to 2/3 and bump it up? And is there any, I know nothing about fuel and how long you keep it and whether it gets stale and all that. I'm just kind of curious of how it works on a high level.
I think the previous mayor was more involved and speculated about the future fuel prices. I think in this right now, what we're facing with the uncertainties of what's happening internationally, I think Steve feels like we need to do this. And I mean, who am I to guess what's going to happen in Ukraine and with respect to domestic policy with respect to energy? I have no idea.
Well, and honestly, what Bob was doing generally, right? I mean, he just watched it really close. If he thought it was a good time and opportunity, and there was kind of a cycle fall, whatever, we knew when to John's point, things are heading for summer or whatever. But yeah, it's just, if we haven't done it for 2 years, we're getting down there.
And the fuel degrades and it stores better if the tank's full.
Yeah.
Less condensation.
Yeah, they do add fuel stabilizers to keep it fresh. But yeah, Steve's feeling is that now's the time to do it before summer's here. And so I agree with him. And So we'll push this forward to our next council meeting.
Good, thank you.
All right, I think we have one more item, Martin.
Yeah, all right.
Got
So
that too, Martin, if.
do you want to, I can share, or if you want to do it, Paula. You got the PDF I sent you? I sent you two
Thank
individuals,
you.
but then I got the
Yeah.
PDF, which is better.
Yep,
Right.
I just gotta switch here.
All right, so before you pull it up, I'll just give a little quick background. So we had talked previously on the branding. I know there was some discussion the week I was out on vacation. But we had proceeded with going ahead and trying to do the piece, which was really a general consensus of coming around to like the house concept was pretty good. Could we do a little bit more with that? Change the shape of the logo a little bit. So we had a meeting reviewing those options of 3 different sizes and different things with the houses. And the committee came back and said, okay, because the other one had been based on what we brought to you guys from committee output before. And then we kind of got a little bit down some other paths. I put a little bit on myself on probably trying to hold that line a little bit more, but good discussion. And so committee met today earlier this afternoon and came back with our recommendation. There's 2 options as we have it right now. They're generally the same, but it kind of gets to the borders. And Paul, if you want to show, I will say, I think that what we're seeing, they're a variation and an ongoing theme from what our original logos were. If people, sometimes talk about things like the mountains and all that, that was in our original logos. I do think that this does modernize us a little bit. I think the colors are good. I think generally the committee has always gravitated towards this. And you can see this kind of emphasizes a bit more of the house, the community thing. I think, Dennis, you made note that people have been hearing feedback about the idea of sharing a little bit more of the community. This is generally then taking the logo and getting a little squatter. The bottom's been shrunk, the top's been brought up. There will be other things that we get as part of what's already in the cost. We would get some black and whites and the other types of, but you can see the left has thicker border, the right has the thinner border. And this is the committee's recommendation on, which one of these does council like?
Don't all talk at once.
It's
I like
kind
the
of a
houses.
toss-up for me,
I
but
like the fact that the houses have been brought in. I definitely think that points out that we're not just a wooded community or a forest with a path leading out to the mountains. So we are a population. I'm ambivalent. I'm agnostic about whether we use a thick or a thin border. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Is this going to be something that's on stationary or just on vehicles, public signs? That might be important to know.
Well, it's one of those things that, yeah. Over time, we don't have to do it all over. Certainly, it'll get used, and the colors and theming will get used in whatever we end up for selecting a company to help support. That does the website and all that. Then they'll just fold these pieces in. But then, yes, vehicles, all that, signs. But we won't go rush out and go do everything at once. I will say also, I don't think if people just said, you know what? Well, I think that would be, there'd probably be, is there a preference to one of them? There is room for the other, but I would just say, since most all the branding would go with that, we should probably pick thicker or thinner. I'm in the same spot. I've been back and forth. I don't know which one per se, if I have a big difference change.
My favorite jazz piano player, Count Basie, his motto was less is more. Don't let the notes get in the way. I like the thinner border rather than the thicker border then.
Okay.
Right side.
Anybody else?
well, just to keep it interesting, I was liking the thicker border, but I'm happy with either one.
We might have to go. We're going to be going roll call here, everybody.
I'm looking for somebody to stick their neck out and be a tiebreaker.
No, I thought you want like
I'm
someone
happy
in
either way.
between the two.
Dennis was, can I have a 0.2 extra kerning on the?
Exactly.
I just really appreciate the committee working through this and further refining this, and I think they both look good. Thanks.
That was all
right.
Yep. Okay.
Anybody else?
Martin, my only follow-up request would be that we do have a version that has those houses in the dark green of the same as the trees. I just think there's going to be times when we want fewer colors. And if we just knock one. color
Oh,
out,
you're just saying make the
houses dark green.
like
Just as
the
an alternative, like a real straightforward, no other changes, just a dark green as well as.
and then
gray.
so then the windows and everything would disappear.
Just a silhouette.
Like that original version that
Mhm.
only Ron noticed that there were.
I actually think I have. I don't. Doesn't the no window? I think we have one of those with the no window version. Paula, you have that one.
No, well, yeah,
Don't
but no,
go there.
she's talking
Yeah.
about the where the whole thing is the same color as those trees in the far background. She's talking
Oh,
about
that's
version.
right. Oh, yeah. Maybe we didn't do one that. You're right. They're
That's
right.
just
They
my
were to the
design
grace.
leaning, is that
I
it
gotcha.
feels like the gray does add an extra.
Yeah,
color.
you're right, Paula. The other one was just that gray color, but no windows, not the
Yeah.
dark color. It was way back on the original stuff.
Sorry, I
Was
didn't
the
mean to
subtlety.
stop sharing.
All right.
I think it's fine.
Noted, Val.
We need to go back.
Okay. I
And then I
think
just
we're-
had one follow-up from a conversation we had at the end of the last meeting.
Yep.
There was some interest in learning more about the Evergreen Communities Act and the tree canopy endorsement that came up. I've lined up 3 potential resources that we could take a look at. There's an 8-minute interview with Councilmember Dunn, who's the backer of this policy change that's being considered at the county. There's legal resources. If we have specific legal questions, we can peg. That won't be live, but we can get email responses. And then the final resource that could be available to us is that Ben Thompson's urban forestry team at DNR can send somebody to one of our workshop meetings to give us a short presentation about what Evergreen Communities does what the Evergreen Communities Act intends to do for communities and what it requires of municipality. So those are the resources that I've pulled together.
Okay.
The one thing that Ben threw out that we should be aware of is that the grant money that is available through the DNR is a one-time only thing. And one of the requirements, if we wanted to think about going the Evergreen Communities direction, is a tree inventory. And this is really in the weeds because I know you guys don't know a lot of this stuff, but if we were able to fund a tree inventory as part of a grant, then that would be one step towards the Community Act. So just pulling that together for.
I'm gonna stop everybody before anybody else says anything. You are in a meeting that you cannot make decisions.
Oh, I know. I was just throwing out
And-
that I have the resources.
Right. I
available.
wanted to make sure before everybody else started commenting on you and for you guys to bring this forward in the next meeting, you need those people who showed interest. You actually need to be calling a motion, Valerie. You would motion to bring this forward. Somebody else would second it and then everybody would vote because there's a little bit of interest, but there wasn't full interest. And so that's how you bring the item forward, moving forward. I just don't want you guys to do that in the middle.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to overstep. I just wanted you to know that I didn't have all the resources available last time, and I do have those things available should council be interested.
Yeah, because
All right.
I could see sparks in people's eyes as you were talking.
Keep us in line. Thanks, Paula.
All right. Yes, and obviously, as we continue to look for people to be employees here in our city, and whether in public works or in policing, it's a huge issue that all the cities are facing. So it's important that we spread the word about how great it is to be an employee in the city of Briar, not only a resident, but an employee would be great because those positions need to be filled. All right. I want to thank everyone. And we will see you, if there's nothing else, next Tuesday night.
And if it wasn't clear, we'll go with the thin border. I think I heard enough towards thin border. So it's a really important thing.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have
Thanks.
a
Good night,
wonderful
guys.
night, everyone.
You too.